Hi, folks. I came across an interesting story on LBC News, and I'll quote the story. It's not very long, and just let me know your thoughts. I'm a little pushed for time, so I'm going to read it out, briefly outline some of my thoughts on this, and then, yeah, I need to get going. So, actually, if you watch my last video, I won't get a paper to see if the I has bothered to publish my comment. They probably haven't. We'll see. I mean, they've no obligation to, but it would be good if they did. Okay, so virtue signaling nonsense. Police slam for woke rainbow helmet worn by officer. Um, Cambridgeshire police were criticised after sharing pictures of Superintendent James Sutherland wearing the brightly coloured helmet whilst patrolling Cambridge on Monday. They said today is hashtag I the Hobbit, that's all caps, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. To mark the occasion, Superintendent James Sutherland donned his ever so colourful rainbow custodian on patrol around Cambridge this morning. However, locals condemned the virtue signalling nonsense, suggesting it undermines the force's credibility. Policing Minister Kit Malthouse told LBC today if he's wearing that in a community environment, then it's a matter for his chief constable. If he's got to the rank of superintendent, it means he's had an impressive career thus far, and I can guarantee he will have nicked a lot of villains during his career. I'm a bit old fashioned. I like brass buttons and a smart look, but as I say, he's a senior police officer. He will have done a lot of villain nicking. I have to salute him for his service and treat this as one of those minor issues. I'll come back to that. One person slammed the move on Twitter saying non issue helmet, no body armor or personnel protection equipment. In other words, a woke photo opportunity. The public would just like the police to police more virtue signaling nonsense. Another said this virtue signaling nonsense has to stop. A third person tweeted, how about doing some policing instead of being woke? It undermines your credibility. Superintendent Sutherland was previously pictured wearing the helmet during an ED Pride event. Cambridgeshire Police said it was committed to being inclusive and claimed the helmet, which was made by local students, has no political message, according to the Mail. Now, most of the comments on the thread were in that line. They were criticising it for wokery. There were some who were saying that people who took an issue with this must therefore be against LGBT people. And that really reiterates what I loathe, and I do use the word loathe, about woke thinking. This manipulative way in which they smear anyone who doesn't see the world as exactly as they do as bigots. So the argument is if you're against this hat, you must therefore be against LGBT people. I don't know if Superintendent Sutherland is himself gay or what, but um, the fact that he's a senior officer is irrelevant. He's a police officer. He's a police officer. He may well have had a very established career, but it's about optics. And I personally take the view that there should be a consistency, a professionalism. I think it's very possible to send out a pro LGBT message without this. Um, I think, frankly, what should suffice is equal hiring and ensuring there's no bullying in the workplace. But is it really the position? Is it really the responsibility of police forces to be pushing, an LGBT message? Um, their job is to investigate hate crime. Now, let's say there is a gay person who's been a victim of hate crime. I would imagine it's not for me to speak for them, but I would imagine that their number one thing would be that the perpetrators are arrested. I'm sure that that would be a bigger priority to them than the arresting officers wearing an LGBT pride hat for solidarity. So I agree with the majority who say it's inappropriate. I just don't think it's professional. I certainly don't think it would be a deterrent to criminals. I mean, one could argue that the police are not a deterrent anyway, because the sort of thugs that we have nowadays, like those that I mentioned in the Cramlington case, they're not frightened of the authorities, so I guess it would make no difference. Nevertheless, a navy or black pith helmet represents authority more than a pride flag does. I'm sorry, but it just does. Um, Anyway, let me know your thoughts. I'll put a link to this. I just think there's other ways to be LGBT inclusive. Equal hiring, ensuring there's no bullying in the workplace. But I don't believe that public bodies should be going out of their way to pander to minority groups other than ensuring that they're protected. But they say it's not pushing a political agenda. Well, really, it is. It is because it's saying this is the pride flag. The pride flag is a socio-political symbol. I don't agree with those who say it isn't. It is. Um, because with that you have legislation involved, where legislation involved is political by nature. So, I don't agree with those who say pride isn't political. It is. It's a bit like they say the Eurovision's political. Well, Pride is political. I'm not saying it's purely political. Obviously, the principle of Pride was for LGBT people to be comfortable in themselves, but um, I do think there has been a tendency in recent years for particularly police forces to engage in this sort of stuff. And you have to ask, you see eco zealots causing disruption, and literally police officers standing by and doing nothing in some cases. So people will justifiably ask, what are their priorities? Are their priorities dealing with criminals or just virtue signaling? It's like the Liverpool force a few years ago who had this ridiculous slogan saying it's an offence. Be offensive or something along those lines. They had to take it down and clarify that they were not against free speech. But I do think that, I've defended the police on occasion. I've said they do a difficult job. Their pay is pretty mediocre, but sometimes they do themselves no favors. These are senior decisions that are made, and we can't blame the government for that. So I think some public criticism of the police is warranted because they don't do themselves any favours with this. In the grand scheme of things, it's not hurting anyone. I just don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think it should be the priority. Um, because what are you going to have? I mean, the insinuation would be if you're against this, let's say that someone criticised a police officer wearing the Ukraine flag. Um, does that mean the person would be pro-Russia? Not necessarily. They might just say, well, it's not the right place for it. So this idea that just because you're criticizing something, you must therefore be against the message is false. It's about it's about consistency, it's about appropriateness, it's about professionalism. It's really that simple. So yeah, I agree with those who say it is virtue signaling, and I have a big problem with this obnoxious way that woke activists try to smear people who don't agree with them somehow being pro bigotry. That's so obnoxious, it's so manipulative, and it's just plain wrong. Okay, let me know your thoughts. I'll put a link to this.